sang about Christmas every year. His voice filled shopping malls, radios, fireplaces. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. It was tradition, but on Christmas morning, 2016, George Michael's heart gave out. In a quiet village outside London, in a grand house surrounded by fog and silence, the man who once ruled the charts was found dead, alone, cold, in bed. There were no drugs at his side, no suicide note, no cameras, no goodbye. The world didn't even know he was sick. And as tributes poured in, so did the questions. Why was he alone? What had he been hiding? And what came next? No one expected. Because when the lawyers unsealed his will, even George's own family couldn't believe what they read. At the height of his fame, George Michael was everywhere. Wham! Had electrified the 80s. His solo album Faith sold over 25 million copies. He stood on the same stage as Bowie, Elton, and Aretha. But as the spotlight grew, George started to disappear. Fame didn't set him free. It crushed him. He watched his first love, Anselmo Filippa, die from AIDS in 1993. He lost his mother just a few years later. And the world watched him spiral through scandals, courtroom battles, and addiction. By 2011, he was nearly unrecognizable. He canceled tours. He rarely left his house. That house, nestled in Goring-on-Thames, became a kind of fortress. Locals said they never saw him. Friends said he stopped answering calls. Even the paparazzi stopped bothering. To most, George Michael had vanished. But behind closed doors, something else was happening. He was rewriting his story, and he was rewriting his will. December 25, 2016. It was a quiet morning, no alarms, no scheduled interviews, no flashing bulbs. Fadi Fawaz, George's on and off partner, said he let himself into the house late that morning. George had promised they'd spend Christmas together. But something was wrong. The house was silent, no movement, no music. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, George Michael lay in bed. He looked peaceful, almost asleep. But he was gone. The man who once sang to millions had died with no one beside him. He was 53. The autopsy would later confirm it was natural causes: dilated cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, and fatty liver disease. His heart, literally, had stopped working. But that didn't stop the storm. Because while the official report closed the case, the will was just opening another. George Michael's estate was massive, estimated between 97 and 120 million pounds. He owned multiple homes, a priceless art collection, royalties from decades of global hits. When the will was read in 2017, the world expected the usual: family, maybe a longtime partner, perhaps a few charities. But what they found left jaws on the floor. His father, Jack, his sisters, Melanie and Yoda, a few trusted friends and lifelong employees. Even his favorite charities, Childline and the Terrence Higgins Trust, were all remembered. But two names were missing. Two names that had been part of George's most intimate life. And their exclusion would set off emotional and legal fireworks. Fadi Fawaz claimed to be George's partner at the time of his death. He was the one who found him. He spoke to the press. He tweeted tributes. But the will? Not a single mention. No house, no funds, not even a message. And things got ugly. Fadi refused to leave George's London townhouse. He claimed he was being treated like a nobody. He smashed a bathroom window. He was arrested for vandalism. For months, he lived there without heat or power, squatting in a home that no longer belonged to him. The family? They said nothing. The message was clear. George Michael did not want Fadi in his future. Then came Kenny Goss. He wasn't just a former lover. He was the love of George's life for over 13 years. They met in 1996. They appeared in public. They supported each other through rehab, therapy, and loss. Even after their split in 2009, George financially supported Kenny, £15,000 a month by some accounts. But in George's final will, nothing. Kenny sued the estate in 2018. He claimed George had promised to care for him for life, that he was a dependent, that he had stood by George through addiction, breakdowns, arrests, and now he was being erased. The case dragged on. In 2021, Kenny and the estate quietly settled out of court. No one knows how much he got. But the family didn't fight it. Maybe they knew. Maybe George had left wounds behind, even in his final goodbye. George loved his sisters, especially Melanie. She was his best friend, his shadow on tour, his quiet protector. He left her half his fortune. But just 3 years after his death, Melanie died. Christmas Day 2019, the same day. She was only 55. The cause? Diabetic ketoacidosis. Some said she died of a broken heart. Now, the only surviving sibling, Iota, was left to manage the entire estate. A sister grieving a brother and another sister lost on the very same day. The family had stayed silent through the lawsuits, through the scandals, through the rumors. But their grief? That never faded. People couldn't understand. Why cut out Kenny and Fadi? Why leave everything to family, friends, and charities, but not the men he once called his soulmates? The truth might never be fully known, but maybe that was the point. George Michael had spent decades trying to control the chaos in his life. Drugs, paparazzi, fame, loss. And when he finally found peace in Goring on Thames, maybe that was when he made his final choice. A will written with clarity, not out of revenge, but as a final act of control. A quiet goodbye, a final chorus. To this day, George Michael lies in a private plot next to his beloved mother. There is no gravestone, no flashy monument, just a patch of earth behind a locked gate, guarded from cameras and fame. Because in the end, the man who gave everything to music didn't want to be remembered by a plaque. He wanted to be remembered by his songs, by the people he helped, and by the quiet way he finally walked away. His will shocked the world. But maybe it wasn't meant to hurt. Maybe it was his way of saying, the ones who truly knew me never needed a check. George Michael didn't die in scandal. He didn't leave a tell-all memoir. He left a signature, a list of names, and a final decision that spoke louder than any lyric. Because sometimes the most powerful goodbyes are the ones written in silence. If you believe legends deserve to be remembered not just for how they lived, but for how they left this world, subscribe to RetroWaves, where stories like this never fade.